Well, first, thanks to everybody for showing up today. Lauren and I are in separate rooms, but we're in Boca Raton, Florida. Jan Pop is in the background. He's in Prague. So we are super excited to share what we are doing here at the clinic and about the field of longevity medicine in general. So we will get started. Should take 20-25 minutes. And then at the end, we'll have some room for questions and answer, and please ask questions. I think we will do our best to explain what we're doing, but ultimately your thoughts and making sure you walk away with something valuable is the most important thing to us. So we'll get started. My name's Eric, Director of Clinical Programs here at Healthy Longevity Clinic, and I'm super excited to be with Lauren. And Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lauren Klein. I'm a physician associate and here to go through what we can offer you at our program.
And first, Lauren, I'll let you go. I think whenever we talk about what is longevity medicine, I come up with 10 different descriptions. I'm trying to hone it down to one, but I'll let you go first in your mind and experience. What is longevity medicine?
So I think that, anyone can come up with a whole list of different things that can explain what longevity medicine is. Currently, research is out there about reducing biological age, which is your cellular age versus the number of candles on the cake. But when I think about longevity medicine, it's about a proactive approach to medicine so that we can prolong life in a healthy capacity. We want to prevent diseases of aging, otherwise known as chronic disease. I think that most people could, relate that nobody wants to live long if they're bedridden. So my goal is to practice in a way that we live healthy. We avoid encountering any kind of death or diseases before we really have to, so that we can live a life that's both long and proactive and healthy. So we can separate this into lifespan and health span. And our lifespan is the amount of time we live. It's steadily growing longer. We know that the life expectancy has increased over the last 100 years. It's approximately 76 years in men and 81 in women. But the problem is that even though we're living longer, we're doing so with chronic health conditions that significantly lower our quality of life. And I think that there's no reason to assume that we can't live well beyond 100 if we do so in the right manner. So instead of looking at lifespan, I think we really need to focus on health span, which is the amount of time that we live in good health. It's not about preventing it is about preventing or delaying the onset of these kind of top 10 killers or causes of death. And in the US, some of those are cardiac disease, cancers, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. Sometimes we call that type 3 diabetes. And these actually can be prevented, delayed, and supported if we're being proactive and we're using the right tools and tests to take steps towards improving our living. So health span is going to encompass our physical, our mental health, our cognitive health, our cardiac health, and reversing the clock. So again, I talked about a little bit about that biological age or that cellular age. We want to decrease that rate of aging. We want to prevent sarcopenia, which is age-related progressive muscle and strength loss. And that requires maintaining our physical well-being and how well our bodies function. So strengthening and optimizing our hormones to decrease the rate of muscle loss could be really helpful. And I now think that medicine has evolved to a point that we have tools that we can constantly utilize to detect disease before it emerges. We also have tests that we can use to find cancer at its earliest stages. Within our clinic alone, we're using advanced CT imaging and AI to assess not just stable calcium in the heart, but plaque of burden or harm that it may cause. We send people to a cardiologist when they have symptoms of chest pain or shortness of breath, and they may get a stress test, but that's only going to show disease when it's very, very severe. And we don't want to wait until we get to that part. We want to catch it really, really early on. So between advanced testing with lipids and genes and CTs, we have cardiopulmonary testing in our clinic, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, that can look at subclinical or microvascular heart disease at its earliest stages. It's utilizing these for each organ system to make sure that we're helping you to live the healthiest, longest life that you can. So I know I took this and I made it very long, but I'll end with a few cliches on longevity medicine. People talk about genes all the time, and genes don't actually have to be our destiny. We can prevent what we know, and we know that genes certainly contribute to our long-term outcomes. But if we know what's there, we can take the steps to mitigate certain symptoms or even prevent them from coming about. And knowledge is power. So a lot of times we like to hide from what's going on, but by doing certain testing and seeing what's happening under the surface, we have the ability and the power to taking the first step to either stopping a disease in its tracks or reversing what's already there or slowing down the progression of it. So again, longevity medicine encompasses a whole host of things, and all things that we hope to tackle while people come into our clinic.
That's awesome. From my perspective, we'll get going to the next slide, but I remember in nursing school walking through a nursing home, and I thought it was very sad, the state that people live in, you know, maybe after the age 80. It's starting to happen earlier, chronic disease. So ultimately, putting nursing homes out of business is something that is on my mind, and I don't mean that by taking people's jobs, but having people live a quality of life at home, die in their home instead of a nursing home, and maintain cognitive state, bulletproof the body through aging, prevent disease, all that good stuff. So thank you, Lauren. I'll move on to the next one. So our ecosystem, super quick. We operate under Longevity Tech Fund. We've about 40 portfolio companies. The founder has invested into, and they all have one goal, is to contribute to aging or longevity in some manner. So we're going to focus just on the clinics. That's where we're at. We also have our first clinic in Prague, Czech Republic, that started 2 years ago, and they're doing very well. Boca Raton is the first one in the US, and we do have global expansion plans as well as a few more here in the US. Healthy Longevity Cafe. I'm not going to, due to time, go into that, but if you want to check it out, healthylongevity.cafe. It's a pretty neat concept in Prague. We have a education arm called Healthy Longevity Guide. So when every patient goes through our processes, we're educating them as well, giving them the why and the reasons why we're doing this. Instead of just taking a directive from a doctor, we want to support them, and so they understand it. And we also are involved in clinical trials in the Bahamas, which will be soon underway. Just recent approval is very exciting. So that's another aspect of what we're doing. And Lauren, do you want to go into the client journey here at the clinic?
Sure. So our client journey, if you're interested after watching this, or you have any friends that you think are interested, starts with the welcome phase. And that's by contacting our office, whether it be through looking at our website, or giving us a call. And we will lead you to a discovery consultation that may take place with Eric, or a liaison on our team here. And at that point, we'll discuss an overview of the services and offerings that we provide, our approach to longevity, in the sense of how our plan works, and then kind of get an overall view of what your goals are, any past medical history that may have brought you here, or the goals that you wish to attain by coming to see our practice. After that, you would schedule a visit to come in and see myself or Dr. Levitt, and that's where we would begin your initial testing phase. We'll go over that in more depth on the next page, where we really talk about kind of the consultation and the testing that we're doing. And then from there on and throughout this webinar, we'll talk about our longevity roadmap, which is where we kind of map out where we see you going over the next year, treatments, and goals, and then an annual review to go over everything that we've gone through throughout your first year of treatment here.
Nice. All right, initial testing phase.
Right. So that initial testing phase happens after your discovery consultation. You'll come in, you'll meet myself, our nurse manager, everyone on the team, and we'll sit down for a consultation before we ever really make it even to an exam room. And at that point, rather than discussing disease processes, which please, come anything that's occurred during your lifetime that you want to address. We want to do that, but we want to know your goals, whether it's, to address fatigue or stamina or libido or, body composition. These are all things that we really want to gather. We get an in-depth overview of what's happening, not just in your past medical history and surgical history and family history, because that gives us an idea of what's happening genetically, but also your current lifestyle, how you eat, how you sleep, your energy levels, your mood levels, because all of these will be tied in eventually when we come up with your overall longevity roadmap. Our exam will consist of looking at body composition. So I briefly mentioned sarcopenia, or that progressive loss of muscle mass. We want to assess not just weight or BMI, which is quite archaic, but your body fat percentage, how much visceral fat or harmful fat is underneath and surrounding your organs can lead to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, among other things. We want to do functional tests that look at your strength and your balance and flexibility. We want to make sure that as you age, if you trip and fall, you're going to be able to support yourself while doing so. So this is all baseline testing in the beginning. We'll do vitals and the physical exam. And then baseline biomarkers are advanced tests that look at underlying lipids, so not just your regular cholesterol panel, but maybe the particles and some genetics that can contribute to future disease. Carbohydrate metabolism, which looks at not just your sugars or risk of diabetes, but any signs of insulin resistance. We do advanced hormone testing, thyroid testing, mineral and vitamin status, where we're able to see a more extensive look at where your vitamins are, not just a 24 to 72 hour overview, but perhaps looking at lymphocyte panels where we get more of a 3 to 6 month look at where you are. Genetics, while it's not your destiny, it can certainly contribute. So the more that we know, we're going to be able to kind of put a personalized intervention in place specifically for you, and metabolomics. And then some of our advanced diagnostics that are done on day one are plasmography, so blood vessel analysis to assess for early signs of cardiovascular disease. We do a cardiovascular assessment through our CPET testing. So we do cardiopulmonary testing, which gives you a VO2 max, which is really great for athletes. But it's also really great in a sense because if you can increase your VO2 max, we know that that's correlated to an increase in longevity and a decrease of death from cardiovascular risk. But also that's where we have the ability to look at the subclinical disease and make sure that we're seeing if there's any underlying disease at its earliest stages in the small vessels. So this is all done on generally your first visit. And sometimes this can be broken up into 2 days.
That's awesome. So far, the discovery call is meeting with us to learn about the program. We learn about the patient. They come to this initial testing phase, and Lauren did a great job explaining it. We take all the information from the discovery and the initial testing phase with the questionnaire and the goals to move to the next phase, which is, I think, one of the funnest parts is looking at all these elements of aging, or the contributors, organ systems, hallmarks of aging. So after that, Lauren, do you want to explain what's happening here?
Sure. So I think you're going to go into more of our programs on the next page. And, the whole goal here at Healthy Longevity is to make sure that your insides match your outsides. We want you guys to look and feel gorgeous or handsome on the inside and outside. And so with that being said, we do offer a number of aesthetics and regenerative services that work very synergistically with our longevity protocols. But what we're assessing in the initial longevity exam is going to bring us to a place where we're able to say, okay, well, we need to focus more on your heart and lungs and, move forward with getting that CT scan and using AI to look at plaque burden and the type of plaque that's there, or getting your brain age and doing MRIs of brain. So not just seeing if there's any types of masses or atrophy or anatomy, but we're able to look at biological age of the brain. Inflammation is a root cause of aging. And so we have a number of different modalities to use to assess inflammation in the system. We talked about extensive hormone testing. And by looking at hormones, we know that hormones start to decline starting in the third decade of life by 0.5% to 3% or more every year. And so we want to optimize this so that you feel great energy wise, but also it's really protective for the heart and the brain. Looking at the gut microbiome, we're able to assess the trillions of bacteria that we all host, but sometimes it's not in balance. And so we want to check not just for disease, but also look at kind of your balance and see how we can help to optimize you there. Blood sugars is not just looking at a fasting sugar, but looking at if there's any signs of insulin resistance. We could do that using continuous glucose monitors or glucose tolerance tests. So we have a number of different tests that after we get this baseline look, we can target specifically for you how we want to check it. Looking at telomeres, which are the end caps of your chromosomes, or your mitochondria, which are powerhouses of the cells. So we have a number of different things that will be targeted specifically to you after we get that initial baseline test.
And then the immune system after COVID, everybody's very aware of that. And I'll go into the programs, some example programs and what this could look like. Ideally, 12-month membership plans give us the most impact as far as health outcomes. We're with the patient a lot more testing and follow-up, more hand-holding, but we do offer programs in any duration because people are, from out of country, out of state, some live in town. So the next 2 slides will be what really happens with our programs and what happens after the initial testing phase. So we're starting our clinic in Boca with a brain health program, a heart health, cellular regeneration, regenerative aesthetics, and immune system. And somebody can come in and if they just want maximum longevity, they can focus on all of these systems. I can tell you right now, this would be a very busy program if you wanted to do everything in the year, but it's possible. Or you can focus on 1 or 2 pieces at a time. So for example, brain health and heart health, you could design your roadmap with us to focus just on the brain and the heart, which you can argue everything else could improve as well. So just for example, the brain health program, what it looks like, it's super exciting. So we can do a lot with genetics and we can do a lot with blood work, but the value of having a clinic that has other services is we can add a brain MRI, volumetric imaging of the hippocampus and white and gray matter, which is all enhanced through artificial intelligence. We have a brain health test, cognitive test that checks for memory, attention, recall. And then pretty soon we're bringing in quantitative EEG to measure the brain hemisphere and the electrical activity in the brain. Super excited about that. So what we've done is we've carefully looked at all 5 examples here and what comprises brain health, where there's blood flow, there's tissue and BDNF, there's oxygen, there's brain energy metabolism. So what we've done is found out ways to measure all of these. And I guarantee you, within a couple months, there's going to be more ideas on how to improve the brain. But for what we have now, it's pretty all inclusive. And then the heart health is the same way. So moving into custom plans, what I showed on the previous slide, you can do 12-month membership options, diving deep into a specific area or multiple. We also have an accelerated longevity assessment, which is very similar to what Lauren explained, the initial longevity exam. Somebody wants to fly in or visit for a couple of days, we give them a plan and then they're off on their way. We could see them again in 6 months, a year, or whatever works best for them. We also offer a la carte services. So if somebody wants to come in and do cell therapy and PRP, keep it simple, we offer cosmetics as well, IV therapy, a lot of the in-clinic services are also available. So very flexible. Very excited about that. Digging into interventions. So we always start, it's not shown on this slide, but stabilizing the foundations of health is, in my eyes, probably the most important thing. And that would be during the discovery phase and initial longevity exam, we ask specific questions about diet, exercise, sleep, stress, daily habits, environment, social network, just to make sure those are in line. Because if there's a hint of prediabetes or deep sleep is suffering or HRV is super low, we want to make sure some of these areas are corrected before we dig into maybe the fun stuff, you would call it. So you could almost think of it in layers, stabilize the foundation, and then move into these other services and therapies here. So we have advanced supplementation based on the person's and individual needs, longevity pathway cycling programs, which is kind of a long word. We're trying to figure out a better name for that, just to be transparent, but AMPK and mTOR. So there's these pathways within the body that relate to longevity and how to maximize these at the right time using certain tools. Red light therapy, IV therapy, and coming soon, we've got exercise with oxygen therapy, personalized transcranial magnetic stimulation, very exciting. And if anybody has questions on these, please ask it at the end, because I think these could prompt some questions. Hyperbaric chamber, PEMF. And on the therapy side, this is geared more at cellular regeneration, regenerative medicine, using hyperconcentrated PRP, cell therapy, bioidentical hormone replacement, and coming very soon is plasmapheresis. Super excited on that. Be happy to share more at the end. And then extracellular environment support, fancy words for saying before somebody goes in for a procedure or a service or a therapy, instead of just walking in and starting it without prepping, we kind of have a plan to activate parasympathetic nervous system activity to support the body before and after these therapies. So that's kind of a full support service for that. And then on the bottom, clinical trial pipeline. I'm very excited about this as well. I mentioned in the beginning our partner clinic in the Bahamas, who's going to be involved on some of this. If you want to go to Longevity Tech Fund or Healthy Longevity Clinic, you can get some information on our portfolio companies. Age Curve and Matrix Bio are a couple of super exciting potentials for people on our network to have first dibs on that because of the way the structure is set up. What happens after everything we just talked about? A lot of data. So providing that in a simple manner. So we start with an executive summary, which gives them the short-term focus. What do you want to focus on today and tomorrow and the next month? And then a 12-month or 8-month trajectory on the duration of their plan. And the roadmap is a retention tool, but it also helps with engagement. And so people can understand what happens after this first maybe quarter, because what happens a lot in this medicine is people are super excited in the first few months, but then they could lose attention and then drift off, and then their health could suffer from that, or the health excitement they had in the beginning dies off. So we're trying very hard to keep people engaged, keep people going in the right direction. Prescriptive clinical goals. So if somebody has a hemoglobin A1C 5.7 when they start at month 1, well, we're going to have plotted out throughout the roadmap where we'd like them to be. We understand life happens. We can't predict health. We can't predict life. But we can do our best guess to have a target to achieve. And that's how everything is going to work as far as measuring and testing. Then at the end, we're going to show progress, show what happened that went well, areas of opportunity, maintenance and optimization plan, and ultimately a plan to be with the individual for the rest of their life, if that works for them. Healthy Longevity Clinic, if you're interested or anybody in your network is interested for more information, please check that out. And thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I don't know about you, but I know we have some little ones at home, and being able to go to their dance recitals and sports games, not just now, but in 20 years from now, is really important to me. So I think that taking steps as early as we can just helps all of our future outcomes. But we do know that life may get in the way, or we still want to live life. And so, as a team, I think that we want to make sure that everyone knows that we're here to support them. We want them to live life. I always say moderation, not deprivation, but do so in a way that if you kind of fall off, or have fun and go and enjoy yourself on vacation, that you just get back on track, because it's not about, cutting out and eliminating everything. It's about finding a healthy balance.
The 90-10 rule, I know I say this probably all the time when we talk, but I've worked with a lot of patients, and people are hard on themselves if they don't reach their goals, or they slip up for a week or two, or if they have, I just say minimize damage period. If you go off the deep end, try, instead of having a week of bad habits and bad choices, bring it down to 5 days, and then 3 days. Then ultimately, I think a 90-10 rule is great. 90% of the time, do what we think is good for our longevity, but also have fun and be a human. That's very important too.
Yeah.
Don't get obsessed with wearables. That's another thing.
Yes, wearables. You get that. You can biohack your own life. Get that instantaneous feedback. I think one last thing I'll say, and we'll open it up to questions. If anyone has a question, please type it in. We know that medicine is constantly evolving. There's new technologies that are emerging every day. Tests, products, blood tests, wearables being brought to the market. And so, we do have an internal review board and a team that is constantly on top of this, as well as a tech fund that is investing in the latest and greatest, and on top of the forefront of medicine. So these are things that we're able to make available within our clinic as they come about. And if they're not available here in the US, then we, do have our other sister clinics and offsites that these are going to be available at.
Thank you, Lauren. We have a couple questions coming through. Do you see those, Lauren?
Yeah, so I see one. What are some examples of treatments you would use to improve brain health? So I think ultimately, brain health is, we have to look at a number of things. So we have to look at genes such as MTHFR and, ApoE. So, I like to think of ApoE. This is kind of big and everyone's talking about it now. Everyone has, you get a gene from your mom and your dad, and you can have 3 different alleles, a 2, 3, and a 4. And depending on the combination of those can put you at an increased relative risk of dementia or Alzheimer's. And so the first step is evaluating, number 1, what your baseline biomarkers look like. Carbohydrate metabolism is really important because we call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. So we want to know where that is. We want to know where your cholesterol is, because we know that if you're ApoE4, not only is there an increased relative risk of Alzheimer's and dementia, but people have higher lipid panels, and that causes increased lipid and plaque deposition in the brain that contributes. MTHFR status is really important. So knowing how you're able to lower your homocysteine levels, looking at methionine and B12 and folate levels will help us to target what type of supplementations we want to do. And then within the clinic, we're able to do cognitive baseline assessments. So that was something that Erik talked about in the beginning. And then as we implement protocols that are specific to you and optimizing hormones or incorporating peptides that are specific to brain health, then we can readdress these cognitive assessments to see how you're improving. And then we talked about the MRIs, looking at brain age and volume and hippocampus. We have the ability to test this and look at it again in 1 to 2 years, depending on where it is. So there's a number of different targeted interventions that we could do, but everything is really done on a personalized approach based on your genes, your biomarkers, and after we have all of these tools to assess what's really going on.
Awesome. I'll take the second question, and then Braca Horowitz has a question on hormones. But just one more very interesting component of brain health is plasmapheresis, also known as therapeutic plasma exchange. We're anticipating in the next 30 to 60 days, we'll have that in the clinic. And that is incredible. So takes the blood out of the individual, kind of a dialysis-like machine, and removes the plasma component of the blood and replaces it with albumin. So if anybody wants to just Google TPE or plasmapheresis brain health, you can find a lot of information. That's going to be likely our strongest tool to improve brain health. We also have plans for stacked therapies. So something like a PEMF mat with photobiomodulation. So that'd be red light. And then IV therapies to support the brain, and then targeted supplementation in like a brain health stack. So obviously it's important to evaluate, like Lauren was talking about, the diet, exercise, sleep, and stress, because somebody's getting 6 hours of sleep. Plasmapheresis isn't probably going to do a ton. It'll probably help still, but we want to make sure we're getting that foundation stable. Hopefully that answered your question, Brad. Your second question was, what is exercise with oxygen therapy and how does it work? It's pretty simple. You could ride on a bike. You could also do it on a treadmill, and you attach an oxygen mask and you hyperoxygenate your body through the exercise. I think it's typically just 10 minutes. This is a very powerful tool to support the body before a therapy, or when you're doing maybe cell therapy or PRP, you want to make sure the body's kind of prepped and in the right environment. If you bring in a bunch of oxygen, that will kind of calm things down. That's what exercise with oxygen therapy. It's also known as EWOT, EWOT, and that's a simple Google if you wanted to check that out even more. Hormones, Lauren, from the medical perspective.
Yeah, so the question is, how do you measure hormones, blood, saliva, urine? How often does it need to be followed with testing? So our baseline longevity exam has a extensive testing that we do on hormones. So, it's really important in both men and women to test a number of things. FSH and LH, we think of that as women's hormones, but we can also see signs of andropause in men as FSH is increasing, while FSH elevations show us menopause in women. Women have testosterone just like men, but in much smaller amounts, just like men have estrogen at much smaller amounts. And sometimes we metabolize more over. So we initially look at the biomarkers in the blood, but we do have the ability, if we think it's necessary, to do urinary kind of Dutch testing for the hormone test. But we always start off looking at it, baseline approach in the blood work. And then from there, depending on where you are in your decade of life, either man or women, we can make the necessary adjustments to help to optimize you. We don't like to say replacement. We want to work physiologically with the body. And so, if you're in a certain decade of life for women, we're not going to put you on estrogen, because after an opportune window, it's not great for cardiovascular health. So again, it's not a one size fits all like approach for everyone. We also do body composition analysis, which I talked about, to look at not just that harmful visceral fat, but look at your skeletal muscle mass and see how we can help you there. And then that's one of the tracking tools that we look at as we're reassessing the body. So if we decide that hormones are right for someone, we decide which kind it is, whether or not, it's always bioidentical, but whether or not we're reproducing a physiological effect in men to make their testes produce testosterone, the Leydig cells, or women, if they need a combination of progesterone, estradiol, and testosterone, it may only be one of those or two of those. And then we're constantly measuring it because our body's in flux and things are often changing. So if you have symptoms, we may check you a little bit more frequently and adjust to that. But technically, when we're doing hormones in the beginning, we're going to check it a little bit more frequently, perhaps, at a 6 or 8 week mark. And then from that point on, we could go to quarterly. And then as you become more stable, it may spread out a little bit more. But in the beginning, we want to make sure that we're optimizing you within a certain range. We don't want the levels too high. We want to make sure that if we are targeting certain types of symptoms, that it is complicated, but to answer, we start off with blood, and then we're going to follow that probably on a quarterly basis in the beginning to make sure that you're within the right window. Hope that helps.
Awesome. Next question. Anonymous attendee asked, do you have cold water immersion baths for cold thermogenesis? We do not, but it's on our radar. So when we were designing this over the last, I would say about 10, 12 months, many ideas came to the table. We had to select what we thought was the most important for launch, which was not an easy thing to do because there's a lot of fun options out there, but we all decided on what we have now. And then in the next quarter, we'll always be following this cycle, constantly evaluating what's new. That's the benefit of our team. Institutional review board is looking at these. So we believe in cold water strongly, love cold showers, the coldplunge.com. It's amazing. Hopefully soon on that. And then Brad asked, should he be worried about radiation levels for the whole body MRI? Radiation typically is a lot stronger in CTs, correct, Lauren? So
there's not radiation used in MRIs, which is why it's actually safe in pregnancy. So we believe in whole body MRIs. And of course, you know, it might be limited in someone that has like a pacemaker or any type of metal in the body, but now they're even using kind of orthopedic implants that allow people to go in and get these MRIs without any artifact. CTs are really where we think about, you know, high radiation risk. PET scans are high radiation risk. But the reason why MRIs are great is no radiation risk. We're able to get a baseline assessment. So, you know, whole body assessments is something that we certainly believe in. And while there can be a lot of incidental findings that are benign, and going into that, we like you to know that because you don't want to come out and say like, I have a cyst here. You're really able to be proactive and kind of find early signs of cancer or masses that you can see really early on. We also like to tie that to certain types of tests. So we have the ability to look at methylated DNA. Most people just in general are getting a whole body MRI, one, to know what's going on. But really the benefit of it is looking for cancers early on, because a lot of cancers don't affect the blood work or cause, you know, any alarm signs when you're going to see your primary care physician until it's too late. So we have the ability to look at methylated DNA that can look for circulating cancers and find it really, really early in its tracks. But of course, there's nothing that's 100% in life except for taxes and hopefully prolonged death if you come to the Healthy Longevity Clinic. But, you know, we like to tie a bunch of different modalities together. So, you know, checking in the blood for circulating cancers, doing whole body MRIs to assess if there's any, you know, masses that we need to be aware of. And then, of course, if there is a strong genetic risk or hereditary risk, then you can even tie on genetics that look at, we know a number or hundreds of genes that are associated with increased risk of inherited cancers. So there's a number of different things, but as far as radiation, we're not worried about that at all.
that's great. Thank you, Lauren. 41 minutes into this. I think we can end here unless there's more questions. I don't see any more coming through. So if you have any further questions, want more information about what we're doing or any of the portfolio companies, or you just have a general question about longevity, feel free to call our clinic, visit our site. We'd be happy to share more. Thank you for attending today's webinar.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.